Коллеги,
colleagues, we agreed that we start at 3 sharp, but officially we should resume our deliberations at 3:30. So if you don't mind, we can do it earlier than this deadline, so once the majority is here. In that case, I would like to ask those who are planning to present to take their seats behind the presidium table. Well, colleagues, we continue our today's session, the roundtable discussion. So, in the first part of the discussion has been quite active, and there will be some more colleagues that would join this audience. As for those who did not attend the morning session, well, you know what? We discussed the issues of coordination, both at the federal and regional levels, and when it comes to the implementation of the national strategies and involvement of some national agencies. We shall also speak about the cooperation between the financial institutions and business organizations and their participation in the implementation of this strategy. We also discussed the need, let's say, for a systems approach when it comes to the financial literacy, let's say, development of the standards. So this process is well underway. I mean, improved financial literacy and the development of relevant standards for this purpose. So I believe that this kind of education will be mandatory for every school child, and we should use such formats like learning through entertainment. There could be some individual target groups that deserve special attention. For instance, children, let's say, in orphanages and child homes, so we should also try to involve rural population. There are at least 2 regions which took part in the discussion. So they have quite a high percentage of rural population. We were talking about the importance of teaching aids, and so that some newly developed textbooks, manuals would be developed in the near future, and we should access serious approach towards the education and training of future teachers and tutors, as well as volunteers. And these people should be also well trained, because at issue is the quality of this sort of financial literacy education and associated risks, and the experience that has been already shared by different regions of Russia. So this process should not only develop, let's say, bottoms up or bottom up, but also in the horizontal plane. So the regions have described their experience gained. So some of them could become really kind of hubs or the resource centers. So this discussion has been initiated today, and we shall further develop this topic. We'll try to speak in depth about many facets of this process, how we can improve the professional competencies and level of training. Speak about the role of key stakeholders like the central bank and many others. During the second part of our session, I would like to give the floor to a representative of an organization that was referred to for a number of times at our roundtable discussion within the framework of our project and the strategy and the relevant strategy, which is, I would say, a large-scale piloting project. The Ministry of Finance has developed this project in cooperation with the World Bank. And it's really a pleasure for me to give the floor to the representative of the World Bank, to Andras Harvai. So he is a permanent representative of the World Bank in the Russian Federation. So there will be simultaneous interpretation. So if you need headsets, you are more than welcome to collect them and use them because there will be interpretation here. So the language, reference to the language is given so there will be a small technical break because not everybody has got their headsets. So those who need simultaneous interpretation, please do so and pick up channel 1 Russian, channel 2 English. I'm afraid I don't have a good command of Russian. I used to study Russian at school, and I have been residing in Moscow for 3 years already. But my Russian teacher is sick. That's why I cannot speak Russian freely. But nevertheless, I do understand. I understand the Russian language, let's say 80 to 90%.
It's a privilege and an honor to have been associated with this project, the financial literacy, financial education and financial literacy project. It had actually a difficult start. I mean, I know the history. Things didn't look up very much for a long time, and then all of a sudden it started to work, and it brought impressive results. I'm an economist by training, and I must say that I have difficulty, and I have been in the financial sector in my whole life, professional career, so in the central bank in Hungary and then the World Bank. And I personally have difficulties in today's world to make choices when it comes to borrowing or investment. It's extremely difficult. It's very, very complicated. And if I, who spent my entire career in finance, you know, you can imagine how difficult it's for other people. I was just in Hungary over the last weekend, and we have a friend who is a doctor, and she called me and said, help me, because I have this mortgage loan with a variable rate, and then they are offering a fixed rate. I have no idea what to do. And, you know, that I can help with. I mean, it's, you know, everybody's guess where the interest rates would go and this and that, but you know, and she was completely illiterate. I mean, she's a doctor, she's very intelligent, but she had no idea. But I don't have to go that far because it's my daughter who also doesn't know how to calculate interest rate, and she was educated in the US. So it still puzzles me that we do not learn in school something which influences our lives in a very major way, and we have seen the consequences of bad decisions. I mean, it just, in many countries, citizens borrowed in foreign currency for mortgage loans, and they had no idea. They looked at the interest rate, they looked lower than the interest rate in the local currency, and they said, why not? And so they borrowed in Swiss francs, and then it's the banks. It was a question of who has to take the loss. Is it the individuals? Some of them have been evacuated from their homes, very tragical, or it's the banks, or it's the government who allowed regulators to make this happen. So the consequences are very significant. This is not just one thing. I mean, if you don't know when a king was born in the Middle Ages, I mean, that's bad. But if you don't know how to make choices in basic finances, that's a real problem. And I must say, it's still in the world, financial education is not that common. And I think this is where the Russia experience can be extremely helpful, because I think you by now have enough experience, and you are already doing this in the countries, particularly in the Europe and Central Asia region, to help them go through the path that you went through for many years, and they may be able to take some shortcuts because you were experimenting. And one thing that I really like with this project too is that, I mean, this is a project with about $150 million of resources, so it's significant. It went from, and what I like is that it went from pilots, so we had these 2 pilots, then another 7 regions joined, and now, depending on how you count it, you have 40 or 60 participants. There's a TV series that is countrywide. So what I like is this incremental piloting and then scaling up, which the Minister of Finance has been so successful in doing. I missed the morning session because I was in another session on participatory budgeting, and we did together the same thing. So we tried something in small, and then we adjusted, we saw what worked, and then scaled up. And I think this is precisely what happened. So what I wanted to do is to just share with you some of the experiences that I have with the project, because I was very keen on visiting some of the classes, and it's not only because these were on purpose. So we went together and we saw some of the ideas from the Good Ideas Fund, and I was blown away by the creativity. So you go to an English class, and then this group of teachers came up with a textbook which incorporated the financial literacy, financial education into the language course. And that I found extremely creative. So it wasn't a subject by itself, but the topic, the conversation was such. We also visited another class which was discussing credit cards, and these were teenagers. I mean, this is Moscow, right? So, every other teenager has a credit card. It's not necessarily true for the rest of the country. And, that was a very important discussion to have, because they were running around with potentially large amounts of money, and they need to know how safe it is, what can they do with it, and what cannot. So these are just a few experiences I have. I've seen some of the textbooks. We just agreed to print 70 million.
It's very good.
So
good news for everyone.
Yeah, no. It was when I saw the request, I was thrilled. So this is going to scale. I mean, I think we are reaching a point when most regions are being affected. I was in Kaliningrad visiting the governor, and I didn't realize that Kaliningrad was one of the first, and so I saw everywhere these brochures about financial literacy and whatnot. So I was delighted to see that. Also, I was here for one of the financial savings day, right, a week or whatever it was called, and when the website, the Minister of Finance website, was inaugurated, and visited one of the multifunctional centers where you can use the terminal. So there are a lot of access points. You have the online access from your home, and I think this is a race. I mean, this is, and I think I'm going to, one more anecdote, that I think it was 2 years ago, when I didn't know, I was just going down to eat something in the Moscow Financial Forum, to downstairs, and I was caught by one of these ladies and say, here is a test, fill it in. This was they were testing Mr. Kudrin and everybody else.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes.
Just randomly, if those who are considered to be financial experts actually know anything about that. But what I want to conclude with, this is a race. This is a race, because when we looked at the project results, and you see, I mean, the indicators are such that you are measuring, in a way, changes in behavior, right? And so because you have all this nice output, so you have brochures, and you have all kinds of information materials, and then you educate children. But what you want to know is what is the outcome. Now, The outcome on the one hand is very good because Russia, as you probably heard already, I'm sure that that was the first sentence, that Russia is the force, or was the force, the financial literacy survey of the PISA last year, going from 12, I think, or the 10th from 2012, so it's a big jump, it's ahead of OECD, so it's all great news. But then when you look at the results framework for the project, I was probing our team and I said, look, this is very unambitious. I mean, you have a target from, I don't know, 35% of people understanding something to 37% of understanding something more. And they pushed back and they said, look, the problem is that there is so much new information coming, that there are so many new instruments that are being introduced, that even if you marginally improve people's and youth understanding of financial instruments, you already achieved a lot. And that's why I'm saying it's a race. I mean, we are basically racing in an extremely fast-changing market to get the information out and prepare the citizens for good choices. Maybe the last point is that the one other thing that I really like here is bringing in the consumer protection, right? I think by now everybody understands, because we went through financial crisis in different fashions, including in Russia earlier, that it's in the interest of everyone, the citizens, the banks, the regulators, the Consumer Protection Agency, to have citizens who are well educated and can make good choices. And I think the important thing is that this is not one against the other. It's not the Consumer Protection Agency against the financial sector. It's protecting everybody's interest, and I think that's very fundamental to keep in mind. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, Andras.
Thanks very much, Andras. Well, Andras has referred to the statement. We made a number of visits to schools. Andras and his colleagues and Kristalina Georgievna, representative of the World Bank, they were attending open lessons and creative lessons in different schools of Russia and in Moscow. So we also invite the members of this project team to visit some other regions. But we have quite a number of good ideas, not just in Moscow, but in other parts of Russia. I think that in any territory, in any region, we have something to demonstrate. And so just last night, I came back from Sochi and I addressed the meeting participants on financial literacy and financial accessibility. There was a forum there in Sochi, and when I said that we have developed some training materials for the school children starting from the 2nd grade to 11th grade. So,
after we'll have spent 8 million to the regions, we should think how to translate all of those documents, brochures into Russian. They're very popular. Well, now Q&A, please. A Q&A session. Yeah. Well, some minor questions should be put up in the course of the discussion. Some will probably postpone to the last minute. Please introduce yourself. I'm from Sberbank. Well, to extend the subject matter that we launched earlier, in fact, we do have some documents in English as recent as September the 15th. Well, I'd like to invite our colleagues from Central Bank, from Ministry of Finance, and others to an event we are organizing together with the High School of Economics. That will be the first international Olympiad, Olympics on financial literacy. It will be also in English. It will be phase 1. You'll see how advanced our students are. 5 by 5 delegations from more than 20 countries to visit. It will be the winners of the Russian Olympics and other Olympics. They will compete for the first time at our corporate university of Sberbank. But after all of it has started, we would like the so-called ordinary children of Russia also to participate in the same type of Olympics. They will be able to compare themselves with these stars, so to say, who will win the Olympics. Please join in, and you, dear colleagues, may also participate. It will be both in English and Russian, with the learning materials prepared by all of us together. Thank you for this supplement. I brought in here, as Andrens mentioned, English, and we started with some optional learning, and also with some good ideas forum, and the manuals, textbooks are recommended by the Ministry of Education. Well, as for their core learning subjects across the board, they prepare such modules, inserts, and when republishing those, they will be included in the latest versions. It happens once in some years. As for English, the author is Professor Verbitskaya. And Muravina. Well, I've taken up two of those with me. They are too heavy, and also this is a collection of modules in maths, 5th to 10th academic years, and included in the curriculum. To continue this education-related matter, so we have discussed children, learning, financial literacy of children. It certainly also needs or calls for faculty or teacher training. Now I'd like to give the floor to Nikolai Curzon, the head of the Federal Methodological Center on Financial Literacy in General and Secondary Education, who designed this project at the High School of Economics. Well, we would like to learn a bit more about the achievements, and most importantly, how to advance further. What proposals could you mention at the angle of the existing strategy, how to continue this work? Dear colleagues, before lunch at the first session, it was said that we have about 15 million school children in Russia in total, and our project aims at teaching those in financial literacy. In order to deal with such a comprehensive task in this vast country, the critical thing to be done first, well, some organizational infrastructure to be established first to improve financial literacy on a regular basis. And this objective that was set before the Higher School of Economics to establish such a federal methodological network, we got down to this work starting April the 1st, 2016. And at the initial phase, we took 15 regions of Russia, including the 9 pilot regions, and we also added some region, the administrative centers of the federal districts in order to encompass Russia as far as possible. And we established the regional methodological centers in these 15 regions at the leading universities, for instance, in Kazan, Tatarstan, or if you take the Altai region, the academic center that we set up there was the Altai Regional University of Refresher Training or Advanced Studies. At this phase 1, we first provided learning to the faculty of those regional universities, so they would be able to roll out their knowledge through to teachers, with the teachers to bring it further to their school children. This is a multi-tier system that we have now. But the 15 regions, it's like nothing in a country of 85 regions in total. Those 15 regions, they were not like experimental rabbits, or testing rabbits, lab rabbits. We just used those how to test those manuals and textbooks for teachers to use those in practice. By now, the Ministry of Finance has made a decision that will be phase 1 of the project that has been successful, should be expanded starting April the 1st, 2018. We launched phase 2 of the project, where the number of the regions covered by the project has grown up to 68. we embarked on a bit different road. Since we are in financial literacy, the Ministry of Finance knows how to count money, and we are supposed to save those. So we decided not to establish a regional methodological center in each region, but like in Stavropol region, as mentioned today, yes, they have a sort of a hub that enjoys, of course, well-trained methodologists, and they are capable to teach to the regional teachers. We have now 25 regional or inter-regional centers like this hub that encompass 68 regions. In my view, on the one hand, we have saved money. On the other hand, we have covered as many regions as possible. So, 85 regions in total, not yet covered. But as our project advances, we'll probably cover all those finally. As for phase 1, we were supposed to do some capacity building. The faculty and methodologists, we trained 145, if I'm right, regional methodological center faculty, and more than 130 methodologists who later began to train teachers. At phase 1, we trained over 13,000 teachers. Now, at phase 2, these are projects and action plans that we agreed with the Ministry of Finance. We'll have additionally trained more than 20,000 teachers by 2010 from these new regions, and by the end of 2010, we'll have an army of teachers in financial literacy of more than 130,000 who will be capable, I believe, to raise this heavy weight of so many students in financial literacy. That was point 1. Point 2. We need to take account of it in the future. There are some very proactive regions who would like to participate in the project. There are other passive regions who, despite our appeals to them to join in the project, where the regional leadership, they are rather latent. Only 40 regions have signed in out of 54. But the teachers say, yeah, we would like to introduce financial literacy at our schools, and now we decided to change the whole format. If a region seconds a teacher to us, then we'll provide training to him or her here in Moscow. It will be for free for the teacher. Accommodation, meals will be paid for by the High School of Economics. Only travel is to be covered, travel expenses to be covered by their local municipalities. So we'd like to have as wide as possible coverage of the teachers. Of the manuals and textbooks mentioned earlier, in the regions where such cooperative agreements have been signed, all the documents will go to the Ministries of Education. Then the Ministry of Education will bring it through to schools, and the teachers who attended us from Yakutia, the Krasnoyarsk region in Siberia, they're very vast regions where local administrations are rather latent, while the teachers themselves have quite a vivid interest in this project. So as we agreed, these manuals will be delivered through to those teachers, schools. All these manuals, they are available on the website of our Federal Methodological Center. On the one hand, you can see these pictures on the website. On the other hand, you can hold in your hands these manuals. Maybe I'm an aging person. I'm used to read everything in hard copy, but I relish in it. These 30,000 teachers I mentioned earlier, part of those have been trained, others are in the pipeline. They will be trained. They will get an extensive training course in financial literacy, covering all financial literacy aspects. You can provide training in two ways at schools: like family budget, banks, insurance companies, or it can be tailored differently. Like financial literacy elements can be included in the academic curriculum. What has been prepared, and these the guidelines, practical guidelines, have been prepared how to include maths, natural sciences in the curriculum in order to provide methodology support to the teachers of the regional centers or the faculty. In September, the first kickoff meeting will be held on how to prepare studies with the teachers, how to plan. 24 hours will be allocated to this matter, how to include maths and natural sciences. So some such workshops will be held to allow our regional hubs to provide more quality training, high quality training to the teachers. When we just train teachers, my workshops are attended by a Russian language teacher, an English language teacher, or a mathematician. They speak different languages and differently perceive what we teach. What is clear at half word to a mathematician, that's one thing. I can provide training, and then in the end I'm asked, I haven't understood anything. So with these subspecialized teachers, it will be probably more comfortable to work for the faculty who is prepared for that. That's one point. Point two. For the first time, the initiative of the Ministry of Finance in 2017-2018 academic year, we held a financial literacy Olympics. Olympiad. It's a two-tier Olympics for 9th and 10th and 11th academic year at school. These students, and our task was that these the winners of the Olympics should enjoy the priorities or privileges at being matriculated to universities. So we check these assignments, and the Olympics drew lots of attention. We had one regional Olympiad involved all the 50-odd regions, plus participants from about 10 countries or even more, not only from the CIS member states, ex-Soviet republics, but also from Germany, the UK, Israel, and others. The summary of the Olympics was made. So this Olympiad should be raised. The third tier is the lowest one. The first level is the highest. And the experts assessed our Olympiad as tier number 2 level. Well, I asked, why not tier 1? The answer was, well, tier 1 is never awarded for the first time. So tier 3 is great for us, and hopefully together with the Sberbank we'll surge in some years to tier 1. We are planning to continue this Olympiad because the interest was very high in it. Where should this development go? We discussed long ago with the finance ministry that we should start teaching children starting from their preschool age, from kindergarten. But we haven't had enough time so far, but I heard today at the plenary session that the earlier we start, the better, because our regions have gained the wealthiest experience, and the practical guidelines have been drafted primarily in the Volgograd region. I'm familiar with the manuals, textbooks, how they hold the training. Some experience has been gained certainly by other regions. If we summarize all those experiences, then we could probably start also at our studies and learning at the preschool facilities. So the national strategy has been adopted. What we are doing will be part of the strategy. When I familiarized myself with the national strategy, I got a sense that the regions, based on the national strategy of financial literacy, should draft their own regional programs on this subject matter. The excellent experience available with Tomsk, Altai, Kaliningrad. Unfortunately, I haven't seen the roadmap. Whether it will include, whether the regions will deal with it or not, it seemed to me it's critical to have in the regions a coordinating center on financial literacy to supervise both kindergartens, schools, universities, adult community. Each region certainly has its own specifics. After the strategy was published and we brought it to the Moscow government, and we wanted to develop a financial literacy promotion program for Moscow, the finance department of Moscow scrutinized all of it. We had many meetings, 3 or 4 times, and then Moscow decided it's more or less fine with the Moscow school children. The fact that the High School of Economics has trained 1,500 Moscow teachers and now teach their school children, the issue was closed. But there is a dilemma for us. The pensioners, the retired. The Department of Labor and Social Services has taken a proactive standing regarding these pensioners, and we then later drafted a financial literacy promotion program for pensioners. So we departed rather from. We prefer primarily to see it as a financial security. These pensioners cannot sustain for long these studies. Our colleagues at Sberbank, we have 3.5 million pensioners in Moscow. How can you reach every one of those individually? But we are being assisted by Sberbank organizationally, and tomorrow we'll hold studies classes with pensioners at 15 sites. My faculty of the High School of Economics will not be able to cope with this army of pensioners, so we drew our students from Sberbank, and many of you also attend. In order to let the volunteers reach pensioners or the students, we cannot afford that. We first trained those students, then they developed their own manuals, probably comics with some pictures. It will be something lively, entertaining, and blatant, and we, together with the Department of Finance and the Sberbank, all of us used to sit together and listen to those speaking about how to teach our students. We have built up 10 teams with only 5 taken out of those selected. Not any volunteer can be let into the audience. You need to first look up what this particular volunteer is capable of. At our economic department, we have one starring child. He is really smart. He is a prodigy. but it's such, a thin voice, shrieking voice. But although he is smart, it's very tough to let him into to the students, because his voice is funny. We need to work first with the volunteers to prepare those for the audience. And to wrap up with my detailed speech, I would say it's very important currently when the national strategy of financial literacy is underway. There is a standalone block there in the strategy. That is the interagency interface. We already discussed today that we have three agencies who could play the first fiddle in financial literacy. Firstly, the school children, Ministry of Finance, the central bank, the educational ministry.
And it's equally important so that these three leading agencies would work shoulder to shoulder with their counterparts. We have reached a common language of understanding long time ago, but there must be no so-called abusive cases in the field. But nevertheless, you should not pull the blanket over you. So jointly we should coordinate our efforts. In that case, we would certainly reach synergy. Thank you for overusing the time limit. The only thing I can say that, of course, I do support this, but in order to put the feedback together, I think it's high time to listen to comments from our colleagues, and we shall give the floor to the second Federal Methodological Center. There was an illustrative example on behalf of the savings bank, Sberbank. So this is the example of cooperation. This is one of the components of the strategy. We have quite a number of such examples. So you have a question, right? Okay, speak into the mic. Are there any more questions? I have such a question or suggestion. Just a year ago, I asked it. Maybe you plan to do something about the training of the volunteers at the Higher School of Economics. I mean, those volunteers who would work not only with school children, but also with other categories of the population, like adults or retired persons. So, of course, as a teacher, I can afford to do it. But how can we resolve this, issue? So, how we can organize the proper education and training of the volunteers? So, how to work properly with common people, with pensioners? Maybe the course should not be a full course, but at least some part of it should be delivered. So how we can just remove these limitations, and we can do much more about it using the same resource. I can't promise anything right now. Tomorrow we shall have a meeting with the Ministry of Finance, and the subject on the agenda would be further development and expansion of the project. Together with Andrei Bokarev, I will discuss the issue. As to me, I'm strongly for it. Well, we have some pilot initial experience. Sergei Makarov is also here in the audience. This is another methodological center. Let's say, how many people did you train? 300 or 400 staff members from Sberbank were trained. It was more oriented at the adult population. As to school children, We discussed this topic in November at our interregional conference. There are pros and cons anyway behind this. But in order to conduct, let's say, children financial literacy weeks, we can certainly do it. But speaking about the systematic or systems approach to this, of course, we should involve the teachers, the trainers, invited speakers. We can organize some joint activities. But I don't think that any clerk from a bank would be a good teacher anyway, a good trainer. It's mission impossible. But nevertheless, if you would like to ask a question, please use the mic. So National Center of Financial Literacy. It just occurred to me, we are talking about the education of children. And then our children would return back from school. And we as parents, we are not always prepared to support this knowledge. And I know in the regions, they have really good experience when children were armed to teeth with financial literacy advice and recommendations, let's say lean consumption, or let's say switch off the lights when you leave the room and turn off the water tap if you don't use it. So how to support the parent community, because millions of parents would come over and listen to recommendations, how to raise children financially, how to develop these habits from childhood, and we can support the teachers, the trainers, and it would be truly useful. I have a brief comment. You see, let's say public institutions, they are strictly regulated, and somebody has to pay for these services, or it should be a part of the so-called state contract, because further on they would say that you would use public, property for the purpose, but because the regulations that the higher educational institution has to adhere to, so they are pretty strict, even much more stringent than those for banks, for instance. It is strictly regulated, and they can only function within certain framework. Let's say because we're doing such things on a selective basis, so we should have proper substantiation of such initiatives, and who is going to pay for such? That's why when it comes to working with volunteers, so the regulatory issues pop up on the agenda inevitably. Yes, please. Any more comments, please? Financial University. Everything, Kuznetsov, my name is, everything that has been just voiced on behalf of the higher educational institutions. So I invite everybody to have a look at our experience, because we are more liberal and we always try to find the right time and place for everybody who is interested. So gradually we have turned to the higher educational institutions. I think it's high time to give the floor to Sergei Trukhachev, Deputy Dean of the Department of Economics of the Moscow University. So economic faculty and department is doing quite a lot in this respect. I would rather talk not about the achievements or some already ready-made solutions, but I would rather speak about the challenges and barriers we have to overcome on this way. That's why I'll try to speak out what the higher education can do and what it can't do. When we started this project, the first issue, we had to answer the question, why? What for? So John Robinson, a famous economist, did the purpose of studying economy is to escape the situation when you are bewildered or deceived by others. So what about the economics, how it is taught in the higher educational institutions? So the way this subject is delivered, and it was also described in the Eugene Onegin by Pushkin that he was a great economist, how the state is becoming more wealthy. So it's either economic theory or so why he lives and what for and why he doesn't need any gold. In case of the Pushkin description, so his father had to sold his forest and land. So the way they teach economics at school, it's insufficient. If we would like to use higher educational institutions to promote financial literacy, we should do it somewhat differently. And we should teach the fathers of Eugene Onegin, figuratively speaking. So because the higher educational institutions, they should stick to the state standards. Educational standard, as any good idea, should undergo 3 stages. It's nonsense, and there is something else there, or nobody knows that. So the first stage, it seems to be, it's just rubbish, it's nonsense. But so a prominent role of turning from stage 4 to stage 2. So we should give credit to Shvetsov. So he, together with the Minister Livanov 3 years ago, so they discussed this issue, how to proceed with the teaching of economics, whether we should leave it or not. And then the second ministry, Vasilyev, so that was the second stage. There is something there. There must be some changes, and then they signed a roadmap between the central bank and the Ministry of Education and Science. And then there was a need to include federal state standards, economic, culture, and financial literacy. It has become part and parcel of the national strategy and the draft roadmap. Everything is specified in detail. We thought that the third ministry that has been recently set up, it will be a transition to the third stage. So who does know that? So at the level of the state standards, so this objective could be actually reached at the end. And then where to go, how, so that we would make a further progress. And the next slide. Maybe the battery is low, or maybe we can move to another slide. Well, but there is a reference to statistics, how many subjects were trained, and then further on, so Federal Methodological Center operations started, and there were about 100 teachers who have undergone this course of retraining and refresher courses. So they were provided for 1,400 teachers, but 900 and something, 930 just finished this course. We faced similar type of problems. How to change the attitudes of people, whatever they are teaching, how to reformat their brains, how to change their strictly academic knowledge, and how to make them hands-on experience and knowledge. So we piloted this approach in the Moscow University, and all those achievements that we made possible in the domain of financial literacy. So this subject was taught at all the faculties, all the departments, how to teach, how to train the members of the faculty, the teachers, the professors, how we can persuade them or convince them so that they would be able to deliver the subject in somewhat different manner, not the way they did it some time ago. That's why, and then the number of students who belong to the target audience, and so how many people we trained, and so this is one of my favorite example. This is so we have a testing that, let's say, before joining the program and after completing the program. So correct answers were given by 44%. Let's say before training, we have 12 objectives, and this is the most sophisticated task. We test not just the common population, we are testing the teachers of economics. I mean, those people who are dealing with this as professionals. So correct answers were given after completion of the course by 86% of the attendees. So how to implant this new knowledge into the heads of the teachers, how to make them rethink many, let's say, habitual approaches they exercised before, how to buy and sell the forest, for instance, the timber. So it means that we have to do quite a lot about retraining of teachers. So before they deliver the same subjects to their students. This is one of the challenging tasks. And then the next issue, now let's say regulatory framework. So this framework keeps changing all the time. So we compiled a draft list of documents related to financial decisions, so that the people would be good at this. There were about 116 or 18 items on that list. And these things keep changing all the time, as I said. And it is we also set up a monitoring group, and then how to bring this topic to the notice of students. So how can we do it in the best possible way? So it's a practical question. So recently there were electronic amendments to the electronic OSAGO insurance. It was a fundamental revision. And I looked through the statistics. OSAGO does not mean that you buy something once in your lifetime, but you do it every year. So 8 million insurance policies, 8 million people, 38 million per year. 38 million persons should gain access to this kind of knowledge, and there must be fundamental changes on the market. It's not the issue for the attention of the higher educational institution system. We shall amend our curricula accordingly, but how to do it so that everybody would be aware of this, how to upgrade their knowledge in the system of higher education, how to give proper answers to this. Then my favorite story. So the next limitation. So this year I decided to obtain my credit history. And we know that the law specifies that each physical person may have free access to his or her credit history. Of course, let's have a try. And I just read through the manuals, the instructions, how to do it. I found the website, and then it says press the button and find out whether you have a credit history or not. So I just pressed the button, and then it says that you should send an inquiry to the Central Bureau of Credit Histories in order to find out where it is exactly stored. But you should do it by using telegraph. By students, they do not know what telegraph is, and they don't know how to use it, because every intelligent person should be able to send the telegrams. So she or he should be taught how to do it, either at school, secondary school, or in the higher educational institution, or even in the kindergarten. But if you would like to send a fax message, but here you should send a telegram. But these are not print simple messages, like short messages or something else. Then, of course, this is also a question, an interesting one. What is the difference? How to obtain your credit history? Another way to obtain your credit history, you can approach any credit institution. I did it. There were 4 of those which I visited, and they said I was the first one with this kind of inquiry. In 3 of those, there was an internal investigation initiated, and they said, we can change the code of your credit history, but how to reproduce it, we don't know. Only the savings bank said, no problem. You pay 300 rubles and the credit history is in your pocket. But how to get the credit history free of charge? Nobody knows that. And such sketches are numerous. So there was a kind of interrogation. 88% do not know where to go in order to protect their rights. Some time ago, there was a pretty simple rule. I still remember it when all this processes just started. If you had some complaints on whatever except banks, you should approach the central bank, let's say consumer rights protection. But if you have complaints regarding the bank, you should approach Rospotrebnadzor. It sounds absurd, but nevertheless, the situation has now changed because the central bank service has turned its face towards this. And there is a sophisticated distribution of functions depending different, let's say, violations. But what about the customer or the user? Where to go when you have to defend your rights? We would say we don't know because it's a kind of a maze. You never know where to go. But this kind of knowledge should be somewhere on the surface, and everybody should be able to gain access to this knowledge. So how can we make it happen in reality? But as to credit history, it's mission impossible.
Nonetheless, some solutions are on hand. To wrap up, I would mention 3 initiatives that I like and I regard as our response to our Russian creativity. 158 million have not been wasted. I think there are some success stories our country can be proud of. Firstly, the success story with the conference for school children to learn on eras, on the success of literary heroes. The people who have thought up that story. This annual conference is held at our economic department. We cherish it and take care of it. I think it's a very right idea how we can motivate the modern generation who have a little interest in anything. How can we motivate them with proper subject matter and how and in the reality and to what humans encounter in their life, how to make use of that. Story number 2. That is the Olympiad or the Olympics we held last year. subject matter related Olympics. We held it for our students. In my view, any Olympics for students is not the one for school children. The Students' Olympiad is it's mostly for enthusiasts. I was impressed by the number of requests. 35 regions, more than 500 participants, more than 1,000 registrations on the website. We held that Olympiad using real-life cases with the ombudsman, but no answer could be no right answer could be given to that. How to avoid a deposit in a bank. The question that were rhetoric, they could not give a ready-made answer. And the students were motivated to look for some solutions. Some were quite interesting. This year, hopefully, we'll be able to repeat it. Digital fraud could be studied this year. Only 2 slides remain. Story number 3 that we are preparing together with the National Financial Literacy Center. It's about quests. Last year, we had a week of quests involving Moscow, Kaliningrad, St. Petersburg. This year, it will be Volgograd, Vladivostok, Kazan. And this story evokes high interest in the youth because combining both academic and practical knowledge, like in a play, all of it is quite lively. I think we should look for such formats, and the format we identified, that we were very successful finally in that. And the last thing, we drafted a manual, an updatable manual for students. We saw to consider everything what Sberbank had done in its great study about modern youth, like the rule of 8 seconds, or people prefer pictures, images, rather than words. Great 30 facts. I recommend those to everybody to use those when you develop a manual. How to invent. Well, it seems to me that traditional forms are more habitual to us. It's also more convenient for me to have it in hard copy, not on iPad. But I understand that the people I work with, they do not understand both what a telegraph is and what a book is even. So we should not fight against it, but rather try to find an interface with that. Thank you. Thank you, Sergei. For digital fraud, we discussed during the break the National Financial System representatives. They would also like to invent something. And the results of the PISA program we'll discuss later also show that on the one hand, our 15-year-olds and at least the first-year study students, they're well advanced, but they don't know they know about Telegram, but don't know about Telegraph, and they respond to all unnecessary links and references. They can hardly sustain a fraud. While with the seniors, they have too much confidence. They're credulous people. The youth, though, rather. Well, they have very high digital literacy level. Yeah, it seems to them they're well advanced. Yeah, fine. Dear colleagues, if there is a question, something to specify with Sergei, if none, I think it's high time to give the floor to the second official of the Sberbank, Vasily Zuev. Many ideas have been highlighted, and I believe what should be discussed at the working group, at the interagency board, I believe it's very important what all of us have raised here. We need some feedback also from you about how the work you tailor in the framework of the national strategy there's an initiative underway about volunteers. How can we secure quality of the same volunteers and to reduce the marketing behavior risks or poor advice behavior? I think it's of a concern to everybody. And question number 2 that was raised earlier with our regional representatives, that is coordination. You'll see it on the slides shortly. And Alexei also showed that on the one hand, we've signed cooperative agreements with 85 regions. On the other hand, only 200, 300 graduates we have. What will this massive support for the regions will include if the faculty training plans, they're very minor? And what Nikolai said earlier, we have some regions who have signed some agreement with us, but they are not proactive, they're rather latent. But if there are other professors who would like to be taught, that's fine. So we should look up this jigsaw. What the regions are already proactive under the Ministry of Finance project or not. Maybe you have contacts with them. I think we should perform rather at the level of technical solutions to bring together, to go closer to the regions, that our representatives and officials in the regions should provide financial literacy in an easier way. They really now the moving power there. What's your opinion? Thank you, Anna. Well, you've just taken off the tip of my tongue. Well, certainly. I cannot give you comprehensively what the central bank has done, in which projects we are involved. I will cover partly those. Indeed, the primary task of the national strategy to be tackled, that is the integration, the synergy between ourselves and the systems available. As for today's event, we are rising to a higher level in the perception of financial literacy, how relevant it is. And we thank the Ministry of Finance that we were invited to this event. Indeed, you have a great record of various developments. Well, I allow myself some reflections. Andras said that people should make the right choice. Indeed, irrespective of whether there is a national strategy or not, how many projects are in the pipeline, whether they have an interagency interface. But the strategies and our efforts, all of us both of us should ensure financial well-being of people and allow our economy to develop a bit faster, more efficiently. Therefore, well, financial literacy is expected to lower the risks and teach people how to manage resources appropriately in finance. When recalling how we used to start all that in financial literacy in the regions and the training programs and the workshops were held there for 2 or 3 weeks for workers, employees, school children, local public servants. These are the simple things we used to start with. Now, at a higher level, the Ministry of Education now has stepped in. Our common synergy is now yielding fruit. We should not spoil all the sport at this stage and come to some common understanding how to do that. Financial literacy per se is a multi-sided competence. It contains both knowledge and skills. A simple example was brought up recently. For instance, a worker is working in his workshop. He has a knowledge about labor safety. He knows he needs a helmet to put it on his head, and he knows how to do that, but he doesn't have the skill how to use it. He just walking and holding it in his hand. No, he is not motivated, rather, but motivation is also part of a competence. If our financial literacy programs will allow us to operate both knowledge and skills, then will certainly get a good outcome. Strategy implementation. Yeah, now a couple of words about that. We heard today that this strategy was approved by the government, but look, it was approved also by the central bank executive order. Clearly, the federal executive agencies and there is the decree by the government, they are key things. But for the central bank, for us to begin to use our resources and mechanisms, we need an executive order how to apply the strategy. This strategy will be used, implemented through the Interagency Coordination Board, chaired by the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank. Therefore, our interface will be based on a systemic partnership and parity. We have heard today what projects are underway. It will be good if these projects are looked at through the lens how we'll jointly use the developments available. It has been said today by my colleague that a lot has been done, and where we stressed, we moved in parallel. We stressed that we wanted to build a system, and we moved through the obligatory, mandatory standards, regulations. A lot has been done in that can be used based on the developments available with you, with the Ministry of Education, as assisted by us. This is the framework we are starting with to implement the strategy, not from scratch. A major platform has been laid down, and we can use those mechanisms, including regional ones, to improve our performance. The strategy is aimed at the respective target community groups. You can see on the slides. We'll have to create synergy on the respective areas of all these programs. Let's touch upon a bit and see on the slide what areas have been completed, what would be helpful to use further. The lift that has been provided by the Ministry of Education and the Bank of Russia, we advise our colleagues, all the strategy contributors, to implement most efficiently the programs. So we are allowed to learn financial literacy at all levels of the educational system. It was said earlier, we have now a program for preschool children. You can see it on the website. So for preschool children, there is some framework available, and the manuals, educational learning programs, they are available. They will fit in quite well. That can be used. As for the mechanism of implementation, I would say that the regional system the cooperative agreements mentioned by Anna, they were created from scratch together with the Ministry of Education. It was presumed that the regions would get an interagency interface to allow us to implement our developments. The regions do not develop anything. They should be urged, well, not compelled probably, motivated rather, to take on this material shortly, while the federal objective was to change the GOS standards, draft practical guidelines, methodology, manuals, and to hand over to the regions. The obstacle over the last year was the regions were not quite attracted by this objective. We were not aware why they should do that. and what new obligations crop up. So these cooperative agreements with individual roadmaps, they are intended for implementation. We would like to include this mechanism in the national strategy implementation. Together with our colleagues, we provided for the roadmap as agreed to harmonize all this work. And as soon as we sign a roadmap, we begin to use this mechanism jointly. So the previous roadmap strategy is sort of superseded. No, it remains in effect. Yet we include in the effort all the motivated components. If you have a mechanism, why? So you add the Ministry of Finance there, not into the roadmap. We establish a working group in the regions. It's critical. This issue was raised today by our colleagues. I apologize that I intervene. You have just sort of bypassed, in a sense, this issue. It's not a question to Alexei. Alexei is not that knowledgeable at the high level. But we need still to understand how it will be tailored regionally. Honestly, our experience is different. At least we don't need to motivate our regions. You have seen those today. The point is, what to do? Well, what will be the picture in Tomsk region, for instance, or elsewhere, where the regional, on the one hand, the regions have their regional program, they have expert boards, and others. All of those are in operation. You said you came there and started to establish from scratch the system, but the systems are available there, and they had trained thousands of teachers. In financial literacy, probably you do not need invent this new wheel. Probably just encrust there the central bank, while it's already there. It's important and sensitive. We debated it in last November in Sochi, but it would not advance elsewhere. Maybe we'll be able to do it right now. Well, I'd like to discuss it later with my colleagues. What specifically is inoperable there? After that meeting in Sochi, we gave a promise that we'll write up the respective letter that we had completed that. We issued orders to our regional departments, branches, to create some synergy and interface and to exclude the duplication that one mentioned. It's quite a sensitive signal to me. Well, but the model you are describing, there is no such point there. Well, I didn't have enough time for that, sorry. It's like a dialogue now, not my presentation, but I can answer questions a bit later, after the plenary session. We'll discuss it later. As we agreed last time, the pilot regions of the Ministry of Finance that enjoy sizable developments, we are not breaking there, not interfering with anything. But as for the resources, we just join in our departments, our volunteers, our partners, of course, certainly as agreed with you. And when we discuss our school tours, so to say, we lifted this issue in November, but if it's still relevant, can you bring up some examples? Then only then we'll be able to take some practical measures. As for the regional model, I understand that there are some individual regions, they're separate. But it's the same story in all other regions. There is a regional cooperative agreement signed either with the local administration, with the central bank. Yes. Yeah, there is a roadmap to each of that. And this roadmap can actually provide for a mechanism how to expand. Right now we can hardly find a specific solution, but we should think how to involve the Ministry of Finance and our department. Well, I apologize, Vasily. I'd like to re-emphasize 8 million manuals will be shipped by this year and to schools. They will supplied also with their teachers. Can you imagine the scale of that? The numbers you mentioned, like 1,000 teachers trained and 1,000 manuals. No, well. What should be connected to what? It's a big question mark. There is one model already available, but you suggested to add a new one from scratch. All these, budgetary funds. Well, you are describing the model. No, I just highlight what we have done by now in order to start our entering into the model. We can also say, as for numbers and numbers, we have several thousand schools that in the framework of some GOS standards, financial literacy lessons are introduced somewhere, not anywhere in the curriculum. There are other regions or specific educational establishments that do not use our programs, but their own programs. Yes, there are other examples. Therefore, when discussing the subject matter of the strategy, of course, it's key. It needs to be tackled. Not to have parallel projects at this stage. It should be one single project. We'll implement it, each of us individually, in the respective path. There are regional mechanisms you have built up, we have built up. We need how to correlate those. And we'll work on that probably within the interagency board. As for the roadmap, it has been agreed. Some minor changes will follow. I think it will appear in the near future, will be made known to the regions, to the strategy players. The roadmap, as you know, also is approved by the central bank, by the Ministry of Finance. As for the levels of education, we have some more speakers. There are some methodological recommendations as agreed by the Ministry of Education.
In principle, they are also recommended to be used, and we have a project termed National Strategy. Well, Nikolai Osipovich shared his information about their developments. So maybe I'm too selective in terms of the words. Let's say Minister of Finance and the World Bank, Central Bank, and of course it's their area of interest, but we'll try to feed the system with the necessary materials and technical guidelines. Thank you, colleagues, for your attention. I am ready to take questions, if any. So please identify yourself. I have a question to Vasily, head of the Regional Center of Financial Literacy. So the question is as follows. We're talking about integration, and soon there will be a roadmap on national strategy. What's going to happen to that plan of activities that you started in 80 subnational bodies of the Federation? Shall we follow a single roadmap, or you will participate both in the national strategy and implement the this plan of activities? So how are you going to proceed? So it's a good question. Much will depend on the way we are going to implement our project. The fact that the available roadmap is going to be useful for everybody. But actually, we entered this roadmap having our strategy on hand already. And within the framework of the roadmap, together with the Minister of Education. So it means that this process is well underway. But another thing that we would like to involve others into this process. So, I mean, working with the minister, hand in hand with the Minister of Education. You know, we have the national strategy, and everybody on equal terms should be part and parcel of this on the basis of strategic partnership. So, there is no need to, let's say, involve the government. So, you just have to ask the question and do it. So, Vasily, you were quite articulate when saying that you have an agreement with the Minister of Education. In our territory, the Minister of Education has been participating in this project. We're closely cooperating with them, and the Minister of Finance is also one of the co-executors of the project. But the said, what else are we supposed to do? So financial literacy has been there already. It's a large-scale project. We have 186 teachers already trained in the financial literacy. So there are also representatives from the central bank. They also described their project. There will be 3,000 teachers trained throughout the country. All the teachers are kind of at a loss. So at least 1,086 teachers have already been trained, and they started to deliver lessons for school children on financial literacy. But here comes the central bank with their own project. You said that there are 85 subnational bodies of the Russian Federation, and so we have not just 9 regions that have everything necessary for this purpose, but roughly 50% of the regions have everything necessary for this. The problems are pretty similar, no matter the region, the territory. But I think it's high time for us to get together and try to exercise the systems approach to this. Just one more observation. Our main task, it's just a big chunk of work, and it's a component of the strategy. It's the system of education, because through this system we can really reach success, if not in 50%, but around that. We have population growth and other things, because there is an educational system, and it should provide for certain norms and regulations. We have 8 million training manuals. So this means that the systems approach is there. Actually, we have some more presenters, and they would like to address the audience. And we should give the floor to the business community. So there are 2 major partners. Colleagues, I think that you will share your own experience, but when it comes to the road strategy, roadmap and the strategies, so how are we going to integrate all this stuff into these 2 things? Because after all, we have always been there doing our knitting, but with the Minister of Finance we closely cooperate with each other, and we have a proper understanding. But unfortunately, we don't have a common strategy as yet. But how do you view the participation of business circles and the financial institutions? I think you will open up this prospect. So probably we shall give the floor to Svetlana, representing the business community anyway. So I would rather commend these issues regarding the roadmap. So one of the items on the roadmap prescribes the development of requirements placed to our interaction with the business community and organizations. So within the framework of the relevant commission, we should develop this kind of mechanism, because without the business circles, it's impossible to move along this road. That's why we should certainly account for this. And then regarding association, there are 2 important aspects. Of course, through this association, we shall organize the work with volunteers, and also we shall do some work regarding scaling up of the work on financial literacy. So, and then I would, at the Congress of the Volunteers in May, it was mentioned that early 2019 we shall launch the educational and training program. So currently this program is being launched within the walls of the central bank. So whatever has been mentioned, all these things will be implemented. in any case. Okay, let's give the floor to the representatives of the business circle. Svetlana Tokacheva, Deputy President of the OOB Banka, it's the VTB group. Svetlana authored a textbook. No, actually, not a textbook, but a kind of manual. It's quite fresh, recently published. Maybe a couple of words you will say about it. You know, colleagues, I have been listening. My voice is a bit hoarse now, but there is such a statistics. When the people have heard about it, and as soon as you leave this room, 5 or 7% of the knowledge will still stay in your brains, but all the rest will be forgotten. The same thing happens to children. No matter you have taught everybody and the theory is just fine, but beyond that, there must be some hands-on skills beyond theoretical knowledge among school children. That's why practicing this knowledge is equally important when we speak about integration of financial organizations. So I would be rather specific about it, how we can do it. But and the only thing, so how to acquire these skills. If you have theoretical knowledge, they are not going to help. You have to develop the hands-on skills. I have teaching this subject to the orphans and regarding financial literacy, since these are not systemic but some kind of standalone things. But even in the systems articles, so how they can use their knowledge, because actually they don't use this knowledge having reached the 18 years older, so they lose this kind of knowledge. Why we should introduce this knowledge into practice as early as possible? Why this happens, and why we should introduce this rather early? Then here comes an issue about responsibility, or there is this kind of thing like paternalism, and I cannot repay the debt because I have complex life circumstances. So they think it's quite normal when they cannot repay the debt, so they would refer to life difficulties and circumstances. And the banks and other financial institutions, including insurance companies, 8 million would buy the OSAGO insurance policies. But where can we use it in practice? I mean the points of sale, and to include into the strategy for these points of sale, we should inform the clients where they can take this knowledge from, because not everybody knows this, and not everybody attended these lessons at schools. It could be different points of sale, well, even online, but it is done everywhere, but it should be in a systematic manner. So we also develop some technical guidelines for this. So how we can put it all together into the single database, where any physical person can just get this information. I have such an idea. I have shared this idea with others, and there are two of us who share this idea. But if I have an apple and give it to somebody else, I don't have this apple anymore. So this also entails so-called interagency interaction. Let's say once you have developed some materials, you're not supposed to spend additional monies on that, and you can share it with others. By saying that higher educational institutions, they don't share information, so there could be webinars organized. It's a free access, well, conditionally free, of course, but nevertheless anybody can attend them. and education in some higher educational institutions abroad. You can also listen to the lectures delivered at Harvard University. And this kind of systems approach, you should not be the only proprietor of the information. How to introduce this into practice? It's the issue of the network scale, how to create a network where you can find all this stuff. Let's say when it comes to the big banking networks. So how we can go forward there. But actually, such networks are there. They are already available. And the clients who would go to their banks, not just to solve some financial problems, but also they can get additional information. And the bank itself should be also interested in this to spread this message so that the clients would buy more products. Let's say, or there was an example with bonds in the Tomsk Oblast. So this should be available at the points of sale, and the financial organizations would have their own matrices. There is a mobile application, high-level one, not just elementary reading, but interactive things. And this could be used in practice. And what else I wanted to say regarding relevance and population at large, how we can involve the financial organizations into the process. I don't speak about the small and medium-sized businesses. They also require support, and they would need some financial good piece of advice. Of course, regarding school children, hell of a lot of work has already been done. There is an ample experience of the Ministry of Finance. I bought a number of textbooks before writing something. And I also bought the document that is restricted dissemination from the savings bank. I was also told that there is one more textbook. I will thumb through it naturally because it's interesting to me. So at Avito, you may buy anything. So there are precedents. And then speaking about the internet and school children in particular, how we involve children into practice. There are some Western country experience. There is a detailed report in 2015. There was an experiment launched involving 21 banks when the school children can open their bank product. So on the one hand, they may remain the bank clients. So this is one of the instruments, tools that you can use in practice. How this is controlled by the central bank and how this relationship may develop, what kind of materials are used in the process. So this is a very important point. And regarding the quality of coverage, if you you see when children finish schools, they happen to be in a similar situation. So who would, let's say, keep an eye on the bloggers in the internet, who would post some materials on financial literacy, and nobody would put a ban on this, and nobody would certify those bloggers, because there are quite a number of such people who are doing this. So something that is being done in the interest of the youth and for the sake of young people, and there could be some methodologies that have been already developed. So I think that we should do the same job twice. We should use already available resource that could be used widely. Thank you very much for very interesting ideas. The only thing I would like to pinpoint. It's the banks and the points of sale. I'm not going to refer to some concrete financial institutions. So for 3 years or so, we're trying to enter a bank and suggest a bank to use our brochures regarding key financial services. At least why doing this in case of one or two. For the points of sale. Do you know what was the result? The Department of Marketing of the bank, they said that we cannot afford to do it because your colors are different. Okay, let's use your colors. So you don't want to spread the information about the loans making. Okay, let's do it regarding the, let's say, deposits or something else. What about the VTB? Are you ready to do it through your points of sale? This information is straightforward, pretty simple, without comics, or with them. So where to go if you would like to lodge a complaint? So we would like to interact with our leading partners. You know, Nadezhda, that we used to do it with the saving banks. For 3 years, we tried to settle down the issue, but failed.
It's a matter of marketing, not colors. Probably we appeal to wrong people. Svetlana, at least let's take a try in Moscow. Are you a supporter of that? I believe it's a good idea. And I guess you have practical guidelines well developed already on hand. I have a question to the bank. On our part, I would say, we'll take on this issue for scrutiny. It was not that relevant earlier. Now it is. The practical outcomes. Yeah, sure, we'll work on this subject, including retail. I talked to them as recent as yesterday. As for the loans, I would rather argue here. It was my irony. A financially literate borrower is much better than the other one. Yeah, well, it was fine. Guzel first. You? No, it was an answer. It was not a question. While listening to our esteemed speakers, some analog dawned on me. Svetlana mentioned paternalism. And 25% of the Russians believe no fear if a loan is not repaid for some living problems, health, or whatever. And Sergei offered us a story how he tried to receive his credit record from a credibility record from the bank, but couldn't get that. High emphasis is being made on credit history. People, when they violate some rules knowingly and they get some black mark as a premonition of some punishment later, these obstacles, they do exist. And it's great to come together at such venues. Is this a question to the National Credit History Bureau or the Central Bank? Yes, to all of them. All these issues relate to credit history, credit record, and people should be enlightened in this area. It's my minor comment. Well, we don't have that much time. Could you kindly please give us a comment? We don't have time for your presentation. Yeah, they are waving to me. It's the end of all. Yeah, we do have places, but not time. We have seats, not time. The organizer looking at me. Honestly, do we have at least 10 minutes? Can you allocate? Can you grant us 10 minutes? Thanks indeed. Dear Oleg, you can speak right from here. And we have also Galina's comment. Nadezhda, can you answer? When we'll put our brochures with the central bank, the obstacle is not the color. Our bank's policy that well, we are moving to digitalization. We don't have booklets at our Sberbank, as you know. Dear colleagues, you have some wrong data on hand. As for the financial literacy weeks, we distribute your materials, lay them out everywhere in the regions. There were many of those, but it depends where you lay them out. We work with our colleagues, and at the pension funds, when we organize events of pensioners, they are willing and ready to collect your manuals. As for digitalization and the brochures, I would agree with you. But it's the same imaging screens. They probably can be even more practical in that. There are lots of other techniques, some sites, websites. No, Tinko. On the one hand, you can see Tinko Bank and the Sberbank that issues pensions. You have lots of pensioners as your clients. And when the circulations of dozens of thousands of newspapers for pensioners, together with a payment system, payment service, how to use, not through POS, to use the bank cards. The pensioners had collected all of them. They learned them by heart, those by heart, and then provided us examples how they used to go to a bank and explain they needed a certain card. Certain person, they were asked, where did you scoop that data? So the pensioners still need information on hard copy. So let us combine. While giving new opportunities, we should not exclude the humans. In one case, we include those. In other cases, we exclude them. Our target groups have different opportunities. Yeah. Please be brief. Dear colleagues, good afternoon once again. I'll try to be brief. I'm from the Russian Consumer Protection Agency. I will also implement the financial literacy strategy. We have been in that for long. Maybe I'd like to remind you that this right for education is included in the law on consumer protection and applies to areas of this education, consumer education, through certain educational standards and through consulting services and the consumer protection means. The strategy in this case is what's supposed to correlate with part 1, component 1, that is legal education of our consumers using the educational standards, and the information consulting system is also part of the strategy. This is where mostly our Russian Consumer Protection Agency works most. We have a network for consumer education that has been in use fairly for long in the regions, the proactive members of that, and the Ministry of Finance. I would like to make a report here in the context of what has been voiced today about the coverage of the community and so on. Over the last years, our information centers and communications, 9 million info booklets have been distributed across all the financial services. Furthermore, in some regions where these booklets were in short supply, we printed those on our own at our expense and copied those, and all the info materials are available also electronically and placed on all our info resources, also on our web portal, where there are some sites on this web portal. You may use all those sites and the media lessons, the interactive options, copies of those booklets, brochures intended for school children and the community. It's important to say that all these information materials, they are being updated whenever a new story emerges that requires high attention by our consumers. All of this is jointly updated. There is another relevant issue that's based on the legal framework of individuals. We have updated info materials more information materials have emerged. A draft law was adopted about the collection agencies, debt collection agencies. A draft law has been also passed on the ombudsman, and it will also be reflected in our info materials. Everything that concerns legal education of consumers as a financial service consumers, all of that is available publicly on the info resources, where you can find, if you like, all you need. And all these deliberations, someone is ignorant of that. Yes, some part of the community needs a long time to learn about these resources. But we stress primarily the people who would like to learn something, would like to be educated, who are proactive users of the financial services, and who are not prepared to take on the respective risks, also due to some misunderstanding and unawareness. But there are very many such people, primarily young people, who are willing to use new products proactively, also electronically. And we are tackling these issues as part of the digital economy, and this area will be promoted further under the certain strategy. As for all opportunities and capabilities, we can provide everything what's required within our capacity and in the regions. If this interface is quite good in the regions, well, last year, not only the financial literacy strategy was adopted, but also the national policy in consumer protection through 2030, where legal education issues are also included. It's another source of legalization that's essentially very important. Under the recommendation by the Council of the State, a series of executive orders were issued, also as focused on the agenda we are discussing. Each region of the country should have adopted the regional consumer protection programs based on the practical guidelines drafted by the Russian Consumer Protection Agency as ordered by the President of the country, where financial literacy and legal education are included. In the regions currently, which are not pilots, they do have legal framework so that all these legal issues be tackled regionally within your competence without waiting for any command from the top, including the Ministry of Health. All of it can be done regionally. And there are no obstacles, either legal or any other. Also, all other regions have set up the interagency coordinating boards as chaired by local governors for consumer protection. If there is a need, we can assist any time to consider this level: financial literacy, legal education, regional educational programs. All of it can be raised, and we will be supportive of that. Therefore, all the technical mechanisms have been created that allow us to look confidently into the future. There are such regional programs. Believe me, there are quite good areas all of us can tackle jointly, and any road map which is not a dogma. Well, the draft of this roadmap is on the Ministry of Finance website. It's publicly open. But some amendments have been made. But not. Well, some have not seen it, but it has been through on the Ministry of Finance website through this summer. But some definitions there, some statements, they are quite real life and good to start any work. Just waiting for the roadmap to appear. No. All the grounds required for the work are available there, and the developments reported by the regions and the Ministry of Finance having those. We also have some pilot regions. There can be a reference point for the pioneering for the following regions. All of them be put quite on a good platform. let alone that we are being supported by researchers, by academic institutions, and all those Olympiads on financial literacy. Many of those are being held. It's good there is some competition. Believe me, children are willing to participate in several Olympiads at the same time, and there are certain incentives that motivate those to that. So I think all of it will come out there. I'd like to be optimistic. We have one more comment, if possible. Well, still, I cannot help not giving a word to Galina Kovalova. Well, rather, it can be just a minor comment, not more. Well, I'd like to show one slide. We have discussed a lot what can be measured, how to evaluate performance. The Minister of Education was not sure of that, but we do have the evaluation tools. And Galina Kovalova, Russian Academy of Education, and she is the chief specialist on the PISA program and so on. To conclude such a lively discussion, I would say that no project in education that had been completed over the last 20 or 30 years has never given such a good result as the project initiated and mostly implemented by the Ministry of Finance and many other stakeholders who have been so proactive today. We can be proud of the results reported. Our 15-year-olds in 2015. But the PISA study evaluates functional literacy, financial literacy, not just skills, but ability to apply off class. And the program of financial literacy emerged in 2012. We need to understand what has occurred since then. Over the last 3 years, the Russian school children, they are below the third rank, but we used to be 10 among 18 countries. So it's really a breakthrough of the last 3 years. We have outstripped many other countries. But these tables with the countries, China is ahead of us, but only 4 provinces of China, not the entire China. Importantly, the Ministry of Finance has brought its project to all children. Our results, you can see the lower diagram. Compare the 2012 to 2015. The results of financial literacy learning. We have outrun the average result for OECD member states and of the top results, the highest and the lowest. We have only 10% of children who have not reached the threshold of financial literacy. Look, more than 5 parts of those are behind us. What's ahead for us? It's a very sophisticated system of financial literacy assessment. You mentioned knowledge, skills, but there are also attitudes and values. Our growing generation, what they acquire in various fields, at school or outside, all of it should be assessed in their behavioral strategies, positive behavior strategies. The same strategies will be evaluated or were evaluated in 2015 at the threshold. It's a simple strategy, what to buy in the marketplace. In kilos, for instance. Strategy number 2, how to take a loan, if it's a new loan, how to repay it. Anyway, individual knowledge and skills are not assessed. The whole strategies are taken into account. In 2018, this year, that's all what was evaluated. On August the 1st, we turned in all the results of the entire Russia, and most importantly, for ourselves and the 9 regions who participated proactively in this project. In 1 year, we'll see Russia's results in 2018. we really hope there will be some increment. Most important, we'll be able to compare the 9 regions' performance with the performance of the entire Russia. Now, in 2021, how will the PISA survey change? New digital financial structures will be set up, new products will appear, there will be a sizable number of new assignments for new products, new financial acquisition techniques like mini loans and overdrafts, and see what a high share of responsibility there is. Too many risks crop up. Digital money is not real money. How children should deal with those? Responsibilities have been mentioned many times today. But how to evaluate how the 15-year-olds, how responsible are they? How maturely responsible are they for their future pension, health? Are they ready to invest in that at the expense? There is reduction. They'll be asked less about percentage calculations and so on. They'll be asked how would you positively make a decision in dire straits, in a hard situation, given some contradictory information available. All this will be done interactively on the respective platform. So we have serious challenges ahead. We are still thinking that we need our own monitoring to establish, dear colleagues. So together, Ministry of Finance, we have developed new interactive tests for elementary and school and high school. What is important for the Ministry of Finance projects? We have made a product, we have opened it up, and in August alone, almost 2,000 children and teachers passed this testing. Should we monitor nationally? I mean the quality of financial education. But the PISA survey will show what we'll have ahead. So the synergy of all our efforts to be included in all educational programs, I'm sure, dear colleagues, I will tell you in 1 year where our children will be, what the effect will be of our discussion. But the 2021 is in store for us. We should be top 10. Thank you. Thank you, Galina. With this optimistic keynote and our objectives defined for the future, we've probably set a record. Yeah, it has taken almost 5 hours of our debate on financial literacy. And it seems a lot has not been disclosed. So we should meet more often. Thank you for your inputs. I'd like to remind you that October the 4th and the 5th, there will be a global symposium on financial literacy to be held by OECD, together together with the Ministry of Finance. It will be like a recognition of our experience and record. The best world experts will come here and will see the experience of other countries. Thank you. Thank you to all the speakers.